And welcome to the OCR Lounge, brought to you by Brown Bottling Group. Tonight's featured speaker is one that has been at MRA for 27 years, and he is in his third year as the athletic director, where the athletic department in the past 2 years have won the coveted MIS All Sports Trophy. He's been a head coach of many sports. He's won the first ever cross-country state championship back in 2006. He's even coached the state championship basketball game where he wore a red tie. We'll get into all of that and more tonight in the show. But tonight's featured speaker is the athletic director at Madison Regional Academy, Ross Hailey. And welcome, Coach Hailey, as a lot of people know you as. Welcome to the OCR Lounge tonight. It's a kind of a cool treat, like being on this side of it. Normally, you're the one that's the voice of the Patriots. But I get to steal the show for about 52 minutes of this podcast and interview you and see the inside of the athletic department.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know I called you impromptu. I was like, hey, let's go do this tonight.
Hey,
yeah.
I was getting 7th and 8th grade games started, so we got those started. Our coaches are up there with them now, and hope the 7th and 8th grade kids are winning their games against Jackson Prep this evening.
There we go. It's always good to beat Jackson Prep, no matter what the sport.
No
right?
doubt.
So let's get into that real quick. Let's just go real quick. The AD life, like that's a lot of people strive to be an AD. I was talking to one of our coaches today, like, I think I want to go to be an athletic director. I was like, you better rethink that. It's a lot more work. So tell us what it's been like for those. You're in your third year.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of AD work though before, right?
Absolutely.
What's it like right now? It's, you're driving the train.
Well, it's it's the challenges have changed over the years. Obviously, it used to be, let's say, my third and fourth and fifth year, Coach DeWeese was the athletic director, and the more I got into things and kind of saw how things worked, and I'd offer to do something for him, he'd say, sure, go ahead. So I kind of worked into. I basically named myself an associate athletic director several years ago, and Coach DeWeese and I have worked together. We've worked great together the whole time I've been here. He's been a mentor, and it's been a great experience to be able to work alongside him. There's a lot of things that he does really well that I'm not wired really to do, but there's some things that that I have found that to be able to do things, to be able to get, there's many different ways to skin a cat.
Right.
And we skin from different points.
What's your favorite part about being the athletic director?
I think just getting to see, our coaches affect kids' lives. I mean, it was when I was coaching and teaching or being a principal, I was around, coaching and teaching, I was around kids all the time. Being a principal, I was around kids a little bit less. Being an athletic director, I'm around kids a little bit less. But, as a middle school principal, you're not around kids a whole lot unless they get in trouble. And but you're also not going and visiting classrooms. I wasn't going and visiting classrooms a whole lot and getting to see the teachers interact with the kids. Whereas now, being the athletic director, I get to see our coaches, and I get to see the coaches walk up and down the halls and have relationships with the kids. And I miss that part of it, but I'm glad that we have such a great coaching staff, and I kind of live vicariously through those coaches, seeing the relationships they get to have with different kids.
Yeah, being my office right next to yours, I kind of hear you say, like, our coaches do a really good job of just navigating their teams. You have some that come through the door and like, hey, how can I handle this situation? How to handle that situation? That's really cool. What's the most challenging part?
The most challenging part is just feeling like you are able to support everybody enough. Just you want to, like tonight. Tonight they're playing soccer at Prep, but we had 7th and 8th grade basketball games at MRA, and I made it was cold outside. I'm a little under the weather. I've been under the weather this week. So
I just got over the flu.
I didn't want to get back. I didn't want to get back out in the weather this week. I was at Hartfield last Monday night, and the coldest, windiest night of the year. I was out there for soccer that night. I've been, but just trying to get to everything, especially in the fall when we have so many sports going on. Those, soccer moving to the spring is going to help alleviate that some next fall. But when you're playing elementary football, junior high football, and varsity football, that's 3 nights a week, and then you're still trying to go see softball and soccer. And, then you have cross country sometimes also. So just trying to get around and see all of those kids play their sports and see all those coaches coach their sports.
Yeah, that is a challenge. I mean, I get it. I mean, and you've been on that side. You've been a coach. You know that life. So
Absolutely.
I mean, being in there. So let's go back to the Wayback Files of June 1st, 1998. Tell me about that day.
Well, I think it was that. I really think it was that first week. I'm pretty sure it was that first week. But I was living in a house in Canton, and my aunt and uncle owned it, and they said all you have to do is just take care of the yard and pay the utilities. You don't have to pay rent. So that first weekend, I'm out there. I'm pulling weeds. I'm in the flower beds. I'm getting everything done. On a Saturday, I wake up on a Sunday morning. I have poison ivy all over my body, and I show up to work camp that next on Monday morning. It was really Tuesday morning because it was Memorial Day week. So it was whatever the Tuesday after Memorial Day of 1998. And I show up to that gym, no air conditioner in either gym, no air conditioner upstairs, no air conditioner downstairs. And I have poison ivy all over my arms and all over my legs. And I'm itching. I mean, good grief, it was miserable. Not the kids and not the coaching of basketball, but the heat and the poison ivy on my body was miserable that day. Ugh. But just, I remember we used to do girls camp in the morning and boys camp in the afternoon. No, we used to do 2 separate weeks of those. Now we do one camp in the morning, one camp in the afternoon. It used to be that first week was girls individual camp. Second week was boys individual camp. Third week was junior high girls team camp. And there were 6 weeks of camps. We'd do 4 weeks in June. We'd take the week off for the 4th of July. We'd come back in 2 weeks in July. And, in the evenings, we were coming back and having our varsity boys and girls come in 2 days a week and scrimmage with the, with the folks that were more like my age and a little bit older, or a little bit the college age, or kids, or the young adults that wanted to come back and play. And we just had open gym a couple nights a week. So, from June 1st, 1998, Lauren looked at me. She was like, "Are you ever coming home?" So, and I hadn't really come home a whole lot.
No, you haven't.
It's been 27 years.
So you were hired initially 27 years ago to do what? Your first job on campus was?
Well, Coach DeWeese and I were talking about that in the interview, and it wasn't much of an interview, really. It was more of a just, let's go eat lunch. But
did y'all go to McBee's?
No, we didn't. So we get. I show up. The first part about this is it's the South State basketball tournament is at MRA the year that I'm volunteering at Starkville Academy. It's my 5th year of college, and I'm volunteering at Starkville Academy, helping Grant Thompson. He's the boys coach. I'm his assistant. And so we lose in the conference tournament. I show up to the South State tournament the next week. Coach DeWeese and I are standing there talking. I'm standing right there by the steps. He's standing on the ramp. Mr. Thompson walks up with those glasses way down low on his nose, a cup of coffee in his hand. Coach DeWeese and I are just having a conversation. He looks at him. He says, "Richard, you had a chance to talk to this young man yet?" Coach DeWeese says, "No, sir, I hadn't." He said, "All right, carry on." And he walked on by. And Coach DeWeese and I just kept on talking. And he says, later in the conversation, he says, "Look, you want to come by and talk about a job after spring break?" Absolutely. I'd love to. But I'm a very literal person. And he just said, "Come by and talk." So I show up show up after spring break. I've got like a short, like a button down shirt, a pair of pants, a pair of dress pants, and a little puffer vest. Nothing right. Special. I walk in. 2 of them are in black coats, black suits with ties. I thought to myself, oh, well, it was fun while it lasted. I've already blown this chance. So we walk around campus. He shows me everything they're building. I hadn't talked anything about what I might do or what he's offering me or anything. We walk around campus. He says, "All right, you want to go eat lunch?" Sure. We get in the car. We're almost pulling. We're waiting to pull out of that gate right there at the gym. And he says, "All right, Ross, I know you know enough to help with basketball. What else do you think you can help me coach?"
This is Mr. Thompson.
No, this is Coach DeWeese. Oh, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson just greeted me basically and turned me over to Coach DeWeese. So Coach DeWeese and I are in that little Mercury Topaz that he's driving. Window doesn't roll down. Air conditioner doesn't work. And we get in the car. We're driving down the road, not even to the airport yet. And he says, "All right, I know you know enough to help with basketball. What else can you coach?" He said, "Can you coach football?" I said, "Oh, I was a manager for 3 years, and I played my senior year." He said, "Ross, can you help with 7th grade football?" I said, "Coach DeWeese, I know the odd holes are on the left. I know the even holes are on the right." He said, "That's good enough for me. Do you have any questions?" I said, "Do I have to get a bus license?" He said, "No, we charter everything we do here." I said, "That sounds good to me." He says, "You don't have anything else?" I said, "No, sir." He said, "Well, let's go eat lunch anyway." So we went to we tried to go to Amerigo. It was full to like a 20 to 30 minute wait. And so we just turned back and we went to Kyoto right up the road. Had some hibachi smell. Got to smelling like hibachi. Went back into the school, shook everybody's hand, and they told me they'd call me back later.
Did they call you back later?
Oh yeah.
That is awesome. So all right, basketball, those that are listening to this and those that watch this know that you know everything about basketball.
Well, that's
what about football? What about football? Tell us about that experience.
Well, it was seventh grade football, and I had some pretty good players, but I had Marcus Thompson my first year. So Marcus and I coached together, and he pretty much coached the offense, and I pretty much coached the defense. And they just basically put him in a 5-2 and told him to go tackle.
That's awesome.
I didn't know a whole lot about what I was doing, but I knew my value, because after the first junior high game, Marcus went down there and started getting with the junior high coaches and started helping coach the junior high game coming up. He was doing the warm ups and everything. And Coach Dewey said, "Hey, come here, Ross." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Go up there in the press box and run the clock." So I was perfectly okay with that.
Yes, sir. I'll go do that.
But I ended up being in the press box for about the next 15 years anyway. So it was perfectly okay.
So you've had a lot of roles. I mean, we go from football to cross country in 2006, where you won the state championship for the first time in school history. And then you started leading these basketball teams. And you were the head junior high coach, and then you were Coach Deweese's first assistant. Mm-hmm. Go back to when you had to coach the state championship, the overall state championship that night. How old were you? What were your feelings like? And you're like, holy cow.
Well, let's see. That was 2007. Yeah.
So the year after you already got one championship under your belt.
Well, it was the same school year, because cross country was in the fall, and then the championship happened. So it was a graduating class of 2007, which was an outstanding class. I was Brandon Boland, Dallas Walker, Tyler Goolsby were my three seniors on that basketball team. Wow. But the girls' team was outstanding. They had won the overall state championship earlier in the day. Everything got moved back to prep that year. It had been at Mississippi College for several years. Then it got moved back to prep that year. So they had to play the girls' game at 3 o'clock and the boys' game at 6 or 7 o'clock, and it was split session. So you only got to watch one game. You had to empty the gym because it was. I think the girls were playing at 3 o'clock, and about 1:45 we were eating dinner. We were eating lunch at Primo's, and all our kids started getting text messages, and they said that they're closing the gym. They're not letting anybody else in, because we were playing Leak in the state championship, and a girl named Reagan Dees had transferred from Leak to MRA, and there was some bad blood between the two teams. And
is that the one with Mobile shooting?
Yeah, it was just a highly anticipated game, and at about 1:45 or 2 o'clock, they said the gym was full.
Wow!
So we had to. They still let the team. They still let us in to watch our team, but there were a lot of people waiting outside that didn't get into that game because it was so full.
No live stream really at that point either.
There was radio, but so we get to the game. We get to the boys' game that night, and we're playing Park Lane Academy. We have a lead throughout the game, and I have Brandon Boland out there. He's like he was basically the coach on the floor. Everything was going fine. And then, it's going to happen. Everybody makes a run. And with about 5 or 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter, Park Lane made that run. And they made a shot, and their coach took a timeout. And I was very thankful that he took the timeout, because I didn't have to, because I was about to take the timeout, but instead they took the timeout. So it didn't look like I was quite as desperate. And, at that time, they'd been playing a junk zone all night. That's what Park Lane was known for, triangle and two, box and one, all kinds of stuff. They'd been trying all kinds of stuff that night. And they'd gone man-to-man. So I got in the huddle, and I said, all right, guys, they've gone man-to-man. We're going to run 3. I said, no. I said, man, what do y'all want to run? And Brandon Boland said, Coach, we're running 2. I was like, all right, we're running 2. And, they still love to make fun of me about that. And they're like, Coach, you didn't even know what to run. I was like, guys, I could tell you what I wanted to run, but y'all have been out there. Brandon, you have such a good feel for the game, so it's been a fun conversation for a long time, though. So,
but isn't it true though?
Oh, absolutely.
Going to that coaches also try to outcoach themselves. If you start talking about that, like the players are out there doing it,
right?
Like more than what I know, because you're out there doing it.
And it's different in 8th grade than it is as a senior.
Oh, absolutely.
When you have a kid like Brandon Boland who goes and plays 4 years at Mississippi State, it's a little bit different than asking an 8th grader what he wants to run, because the 8th grader wants to run the shot that gets him a 3-pointer.
That's right.
And but Brandon knew that he knew the right call to make, and it worked well.
So tell me about the red tie. Obviously, you go on, you win the overall state championship.
We do. Coach Deweese, we had won the semifinal game the night before, and Coach Deweese had been wearing the same tie for a while. He's not superstitious, but he is a little stitious, like most of us.
Right.
So he had been wearing the same tie for a while. During that game, the first half of that game, he looked at me and he said, "Look, I need some aspirin." And I said, "Oh, I got Advil right here." He said, "No, I need aspirin." So that. My eyes got big and I started looking around, and luckily Rick Johnston, who's a guy from up in the Delta, he went to Magnolia Heights. He's been refereeing a long time now. He was sitting right down there at the end, and he heard me asking people for aspirin, and he had been through the same thing earlier, and it's like a couple years before, and he had some aspirin right there at the end of the bench. So we got it to Coach Deweese. He felt a little bit better. Brandon Boland's aunt at halftime checked him out. And she said, "Richard, you need to go to the hospital right now." And he just laughed at her and he said, "I'm not going to the hospital." So she said, "Well, I'll let you go coach the second half if you promise to go to the hospital after the game." And he just agreed. He wasn't worried about it. He wasn't thinking twice about it. He just wanted to get out there and coach the second half. So at the end of the game, she came and got him, and she basically made him go to the hospital. Good. And it was the right move. But the next day we wake up, get a call, hey, he's not going to be able to get out of the hospital and coach. So Brian Cronin was our second assistant.
Yeah.
And Brian and I, Mr. Thompson and Brian and I went and met with the team that morning after our shoot around and told them that it was just going to be us, and for them to buckle up and let's go. And they did. There was a lot of great players on the floor for us that night. Wow. Andrew Howell was a coach at Heritage now. He was a left-handed shooter for us. Nathan Cox and Fraser Adams to go along with those other three seniors, and we got it done.
Wow. How nervous were you?
I was pretty nervous. I was very nervous, but Brian did a great job of keeping me calm and talking to me throughout the game, and he was a steadying influence for me that day. But it was a great day. So Coach Deweese had been wearing the same tie for a while, and Kim was at the game at some point. I don't know if she was at the whole game or if she just came at the end. I think she just came at the end of the game, but she had planned on getting there for me to be able to wear that tie during the game. But I was already dressed and had my tie on and everything, so she didn't give it to me. But once the game was over and we won, she came and draped Coach Deweese's tie around me. So that's the tie that a lot of folks see in the picture. Is the one that's draped around my neck.
Yeah, when y'all went and y'all even saw him in the hospital. I think you brought the trophy to the hospital, and you had it around your neck.
Whole team went to the hospital that night and gave him the trophy.
Wow. Well, let's talk about the changes, because you've been. I mean,
only 52 minutes.
No, I mean I think we can shorten this in. But I mean, you think about Madison Ridgeland Academy back then.
Yeah.
I mean, just even when you got there in 1998 to now it's 2025. I mean, you've been there in a 27-year career, which any leader that's listening to this, I mean, when you are somewhere that long, I mean, you've seen the changes. You're tenured there. Like this is one of those things. Like I've seen the good, I've seen the bad, I've seen the not so good, and I've seen like, hey, this is where we can go. And we're at that point right now. If you're leading it, the athletic department at another level right now, like it is, we're booming. Just built new tennis courts. There's the baseball stuff that's going up, the new fence. I mean, there's tons of stuff. But let's go back to the changes just in the athletic department. We added a volleyball program now. They just won a state championship. So just the changes that you've seen from that day that you were hired in Coach Deweese's car to now, just some of the highlights, I guess, that you would say, like, hey, I saw this coming down the road, or this was one of those, like, man, I didn't know if this was going to work out, but man, this worked out great.
Well, I'd say, and a lot of people have heard from Mr. Land, and they've heard the story. A lot of people have heard the story, but Tommy Thompson did such a great job. He got here. He got to MRA 4 or 5 years before I did. I think he got there in 1995. So I guess maybe 3 years before I got there. But Mr. Thompson had a vision, and his vision was one of self-sufficiency for our school. When he got there, it was COD. He had to pay. He had to pay the delivery truck. He had to pay him cash on demand on delivery. COD, cash on delivery. Not a lot of folks know what that is anymore, but it was. I mean, the first time a delivery truck showed up, the guy walked up to him and handed him the bill and just stood there. Mr. Thompson said, "All right, thank you." He said, "Oh no, you got to give me some money." And Mr. Thompson said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Yeah, everything's COD." So Mr. Thompson went from COD in 1995 to by the time he retired, he had over $1 million saved in the bank for the school. And the philosophy that he had was, I'm not going to go ask a lot of people for a bunch of money, but I'm not going to spend a bunch of money either. So everything that he did, he was great with money. He did a fantastic job of being very frugal and getting stuff, but still getting stuff done. Right. So our school was in a really, really good financial shape when he left. And when Mr. Land came in, Mr. Land took that opportunity of having a school that was in great financial shape and helped it grow and helped it boom. Yeah. So, when you look at our enrollment having grown the way it has, and when I got there, we were around 650 kids. We're at 1,450 almost now. 1,442, I think, is what our number is today. But when you go from 650 kids to 1,440 kids, you just have so many more opportunities. You have so many more kids. Yeah. We were playing in the largest classification. We weren't big enough to be in the largest classification, but Mr. Thompson understood that if we went and played in the AA league when there was only 3 A's, if we went and played in the AA league, people weren't going to take us seriously. So we took some lickings. There were a bunch of years on the football field that we really took some lickings. But in order for us to be one of the big three, we had to play in the league of the big three. Yeah. And Hillcrest wasn't really considered in the big three at the point, and nowadays it is a big four with Hartfield. But he made us stay in that league, and we took some kickings in the football league. But basketball we were good, girls basketball we were good, baseball we were competitive, and so we had to work real hard to be good at the major sports. Right. And now that our numbers have grown, we're still working real hard to be good at the major sports, but we have enough kids to fill in and play the minor, not the minor sports, but the smaller sports. Yeah,
absolutely.
So when we had a couple of good golfers, back in the early 2000s, we had a kid named Trey Denton and a kid named Will Dotley. They were both really, really good golfers, but they were playing for individual state championships because we didn't have 4 other scores to go with them or 3 other scores to go with the 2 of them.
Yeah, Will mentioned that on this last podcast that he was like, there really wasn't much. I mean, there was a team, but there really wasn't much of a team. It was me doing what I could do to.
It'd be like Will shooting 68 and Trey Denton shooting 70, and then the other kids shooting 90 and 94 and 97. It just doesn't add up for a team score. Yeah. But with the number of kids that we've added and the number of families that we've added, our families have not only, the number of families have increased, but the median income of our families has increased. I would say we have more families that are we have more families whose kids are playing golf and tennis, and golf and tennis are more expensive sports than baseball and soccer are plenty expensive, but when you play the individual sports, and we didn't have those country club kids in the 90s and 2000s and early 2010s, and our school has more we have more kids, but we also have more kids who are playing other sports as opposed to just trying to be good at the big three major sports.
Yeah, and they find their niche. I mean, I think of some of those kids that have, like Satch Kirk has dominated the archery. I mean, they all find their niche to,
and our coaches do a great job of helping those kids find their niche. Yeah. Every fourth grader, just about every fourth grader wants to be the best football player you can. Right. There's only so many spots in football. There's a lot of spots, but there's only so many. Yeah. And not everybody's going to be the best one in the fifth grade football team. There's only going to be 2 or 3 that are the really, really good ones in the fifth grade football team. Right. And those other kids either find happiness in being a role player on the football team, knowing that they might get better and bigger later on, or they say, hey, we have enough good ones playing football. I'm going to go try to find something else. Mm-hmm. And we have other coaches that are not sitting around, but we have other coaches that are walking the halls identifying kids and saying, hey, you might be able to do this. Yeah. Kenny Williams, for example, with archery, he's done a great job. Absolutely. He's, y'all in track and cross country, Pat Lovett and you and Trace and Melanie Black, y'all are doing a great job getting kids, You have to have some Pied Pipers, and we've got some Pied Pipers right now.
When you go get them out of the hallways, and I think and we'll talk about this in a minute, but the 4 most powerful words I think you can tell any kid is "I believe in you," and I think our coaching staff from top to bottom does a great job of doing that. So with that, what does success look like? We've talked about we've won the All Sports Trophy 2 years in a row. We're going for number 3 this year. when you build anything on winning, I think it's like sinking sand, right? It's not sustainable. However, we'd like for this to be sustainable.
Sure.
But when you evaluate a coach, and there's going to be many people that listen to this, so what does success look like for you, not as a coach, as an athletic director? What does success look like for you in a program?
Well, long term, that success looks like kids coming back on campus and saying, "My goodness, things were good when I was here, but look at it now." Mm-hmm. That's what you want, right? You want to see kids coming. You want to see kids developing while they're here.
Yeah.
But then you want to see them come back 3 and 5 and 7 and 10 years later, that 10-year reunion, when all those kids come back and talk about, they talk about their great high school memories, and they talk about, man, we had great memories, but look at what y'all have done now. It's even, it's gone even further, and it's gone even more.
Yeah.
The class of 2004 had their 20th reunion back in the fall, and I got to spend a good bit of time with those guys on Saturday night. And I really valued getting to see them and getting to tell them old stories that I remember of them in high school and in junior high, because I was teaching them. Mm-hmm. That was the class of 2004. They were my 7th graders when I got here, and I taught them 7th grade history. Oh, wow. And then I ended up being their driver's ed teacher in 9th and 10th grade, and I was their assistant. I coached 7th grade boys and 8th grade girls basketball that first year. And then I ended up coaching all the girls for the next several years, the 7th, 8th, and 9th grade junior high girls. So I got them as 7th grade boys, and I got them as 8th grade girls, and then I got them back again when I was high school assistant for both groups. So that was a special group to me. That was kind of my first group. Oh, wow. But I got to spend a lot of time with them, and I really they can't believe the way the school has changed, but they also have such great memories of the time that they had there. So it's success to see that they had great memories of our school, but they recognize how much our school has changed and how much better our school is now than it used to be. Yeah. And some of their fun memories are maybe not memories that our school would be proud of, right? Yeah. But yeah. I think now we have kids that have fun memories of things that our school can be proud of.
Yeah.
Good day, sir.
Oh, wait. You like Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a pepper thing.
What about for just a coach on our staff now? So a coach inside your program, and you go to hire somebody. So maybe some advice that you would give an athletic director, like, hey, the advice that I would give you on the measuring stick. Let's use that word. The measuring stick of, hey, success is going to be defined in your program because of this. Knowing that wins and losses are tough to come by. Not every team's going to win a championship every year, but there are, those benchmarks that you want to reach. There's those goals that you want to reach as a coach. But inside the athletic department, where you're holding the whole umbrella, mm-hmm. What is success to you for those coaches? What, in your eyes, when a coach is successful, is when they do what?
Well, a coach is successful. Excuse me. A coach is successful when they take a group of kids in the beginning, and they help mold those young men or those young women into a cohesive unit. Mm-hmm. And as a cohesive unit, all of those kids improve in their sport, and they improve in their demeanor and their empathy for others, and just they become better teammates, and they become better players while the team becomes a better team. Yeah. And in that becoming better as a team, it might mean they go from 2 wins the year before to 4 wins the next year, or it might mean they go undefeated one year and they go undefeated again the next year. But it's not necessarily wins and losses. It's watching that group of kids be a bunch of individuals at the beginning, more than likely, and being able to grow and being able to be that cohesive unit that cares for one another and knows that their coach cares for them.
Yeah, I think ADs need to hear that, because a lot of them are former coaches, and they're back in that coach mindset of like wins and wins and wins and wins. And a lot of them think, well, my job's on the line if I don't win this, if I don't win this, if I don't make it to the semis. You know, there are some districts that do that. There are some schools that do that. But for you, it's like identifying. I love the word empathy. I mean, I think that's one of the things that's lacking in today's society, just from player to player, player to coach, coach to player. So I'm going to take off the AD hat for you, and let's go to the radio booth. Okay. I think this is one of the coolest things ever. If you've listened to any game on the radio, 105.9, or if you listen to MRAPats.live, on Friday nights at 7 o'clock, you will hear Coach Hailey. Where did that love of radio come from? Because as I've known you and watched you, like, this is one of those things, like, I'm not coaching anymore, but this is my Friday night joy. This is where I get my joy from, and you do an excellent job.
Well,
like, it's one of those things that you're like, holy cow, like, he could go do this at State or at Ole Miss or wherever. I mean, you're really good.
Well,
and you're very descriptive. Where did that love come from? Is it something that you did when you were younger? Or?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah,
Tell us about it.
I grew up without cable TV. So I grew up with 312. You know, in the Jackson area, I grew up with 312 and 16, and there wasn't a whole lot of college football on. And I was a Mississippi State fan, and Mississippi State especially didn't come on TV. You know, it was either LSU or Alabama pretty much every week, the same way it is now. And so I got to listen, and I listened to, I listened to Jack Crystal call football games. I listened to Jack Crystal call basketball games, and I listened to Jim Ellis call baseball games. And look, I wasn't. If Ole Miss was playing, I'd listen to David Kellum, and I appreciated the way Jack Crystal called it. I didn't always appreciate the way David Kellum called it, but he was really good. I mean, he was descriptive also.
Right.
He just a 2-yard gain by Deuce McAllister sometimes he felt like he was about to score a touchdown, and it was only 2 yards. But it's
to each their own.
Yeah,
right?
to each their own. Yeah. But the way Jack Crystal called a game and the way Jim Ellis called games, that's what I identified with. That's some kids listen to music on the radio, some kids listen to football and baseball and basketball games, and I can remember I talked about yard work early on, and that yard work I tried to do yard work when I had to do yard work. I hate yard work, but when I had to do yard work, I tried to do it on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon in the spring, so I could listen to Jim Ellis call a baseball game.
Wow.
I can remember. Remember after Lauren and I got married, we moved into a house in Canton, and my mom has this little red S10 pickup truck. That's how I learned to drive a standard, in that little red S10 pickup truck. But I would drive it into the backyard and, maybe raking leaves or putting pine straw out or whatever, but I'd crank the radio. I'd put the truck would be in the middle of the backyard, so wherever I was working, I could hear it. And Jim Ellis would be, telling me what was happening in the baseball game. And Jim Ellis and Jack Crystal are those guys that and, like I told you earlier about my job, my job interview that I thought was just coming by. I'm a very literal person. So I try to lay it out there, and I don't use a lot of flowery words. I don't think I try to use a lot of descriptive words, but I don't use a lot of flowery words.
I mean, so descriptive that it's the running back's on the left shoulder or the right shoulder of the quarterback. I mean, it's a visual term that you can see. So when did you start the radio? Because you haven't always been the voice, but you started the voice when?
Herbert's first year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 2014. 2014. Yeah. So just had your 10-year reunion of being in the booth.
I guess so.
No cookie cake. No cookie cake.
Bo Bounds called us one summer. That the summer, he called us in the summer, early summer of that, I guess, of 14. And he said that Madison Central had chosen not to renew their contract with 105.9 with ESPN Radio, and he asked if that was something we were interested in. And I went and saw Mr. Land, and I got Bo to come by and visit with Mr. Land, and it took Mr. Land about 20 minutes to decide that was something that we wanted to do.
Absolutely,
because he understood the value of having a monopoly on the airwaves. Basically, we'd already started advertising with Bo's show, so the commercials for MRA were already running, and that's an exclusive It's an exclusive agreement that we have with 105.9. So we're the only high school that will have any commercials on 105.9 during the day already, and to be able to get on that station And, people like you and me and so many other people in the metro have 105.9 as a button.
Yep.
For me, I have 97.3 and then a couple of country stations and then 105.9. Those are the 4 buttons I push the most.
Right.
And when I get in my car on a Friday night, I'm gonna push 105.9 because it's a sports station. I want to hear some high school scores. So there's so many people that tell me, man, I was driving home from Amerigo the other night and I heard you call the game. You do a great job.
Yeah.
Not bragging, but I'm bragging that people hear MRA on the radio so often.
That's right. And I think that's the other part of being an AD is you have to find ways in different vehicles to push the narrative of, hey, we got to get the name. We have to get the brand out there. So, wow, being on 105.9, that's a huge deal. I think for any high school, they would, there's some schools like, man, I wish I could be on there.
Yeah. I was the PA guy for ever since that first year on varsity. The first year I was coaching, when Coach DeWeese told me to get up in the press box and keep the clock to be valuable to the junior high team. On Friday nights, Marcus and the other junior high football coaches were part of the football staff, but Coach Hailey was the gate. He was taking up money at the gate.
Oh,
so after that first year, I was walking into the cafeteria one day, and I sat down and I'd already eaten. I got up and I went and visited. I was going to visit with Coach DeWeese and Mr. Thompson, like I always did at the end of lunch, just to hang out and see what they were talking about. And Mr. Thompson looked at Coach DeWeese. He said, "Richard, what about this young man?" And Richard's, Coach DeWeese said, I think he'd be great. Let's give him a try. Mr. Thompson looked at me and goes, this is probably Wednesday before the first home football game. He says, Coach Hailey, you're my new PA guy.
Perfect timing.
I said, man, I'll be happy to, Mr. Thompson. I've never done it before. What do I need to know? He said, Ross, you need to know that less is more. And he walked away.
That's great advice.
Yeah. So, as a PA guy, less is more. Can't do that as a radio guy because people wonder if the radio's still on or not. But
that's right.
In the in the world of public address in a football stadium, you tell them who carried it, who made the tackle, what the down and distance is, and you shut up.
Yeah, I think less is more. Also, can go into
a lot of
that's
stuff.
Just great advice. That's great advice. 3 words that can encapsulate this whole podcast. Less is more. That's awesome.
I have a buddy I grew up with whose name is Les, and that was he ran for something senior year, a vice president or something.
Yeah.
That was his campaign slogan, less is more.
There it is. All right, let's go into your favorite memory in your 27 years. If you had to put a stamp on, hey, I enjoyed this moment, which it might be the overall basketball championship that you coached, but one of those moments that you're like, man, this feels right. Was there ever one of those moments, like just your aha moment of like, you know what, I love this place, but B, maybe it's just this is the coolest moment that I've ever seen with MRA?
Well, the one that, there's some recency bias, obviously.
Right.
But the one that popped into my head as you were describing that was Game 2 of the girls softball state championship series.
Yes.
Just being there and knowing what our softball program had been through the last 7 or 8 or 10 years or however long it had been since we'd been successful, and to see the girls play as hard and as well as they played, but to see such a big crowd there to support girls softball.
Yeah.
It was, it looked like a JA prep semifinal. It looked like a JA prep. It looked like an MRA prep baseball.
Absolutely.
Playoff championship, playoff series, whether we may play them in the semifinals or the finals or whenever we've played the last several years. When Nico Mazza and all of those guys were out there and there wasn't any extra room in that stadium, and it was for girls softball on a weeknight. It wasn't like it was a weekend of a baseball championship, but everybody stuck around to watch that game, and then getting to see them with the walk-off with Chrissy Joe hitting the walk-off grand slam.
That's probably still going.
That was just one of those nights. I snuck up to the press box a couple of times once I realized how big the crowd had actually gotten. I snuck up to the football press box a couple of times and took a couple pictures. But as far as the last 4 or 5 years type memories go, as the athletic director, I'd have to say that's got to be one of my favorite ones.
Yeah.
There's some There's some selfish ones. You know, Sam had a great season last year.
Yeah.
My son, as a senior in high school, the game at the Rumble in the South when they were able to beat Raymond, and he had a great game, and they beat
Couldn't
Raymond.
miss.
So
He couldn't miss that night.
as far as that's that's selfishly, that's one of my favorite moments was when that happened with him.
You're still a dad. I mean, he's still a dad. I mean, he's still a dad.
But there's a lot of great memories. I can remember a playoff win when a guy named Ryan Goolsby was playing for us. He was a 2007 was his 10th grade year, so he was a 2009 graduate, and I think it was in that 2008 football season. We were at Pilla. I wasn't at the game. I was listening to JT call it, and it was 4th and like 15 or something, and we were down. We were down maybe 4 points, and we threw what I call on the radio a tight end dump, but it was, he was playing tight end, and he ran it right down the seam, and whoever the quarterback was dropped back and threw it down there to him. And he made like a diving grab for a 25-yard 4th down conversion. We get up, we go score the touchdown. We end up winning the game right at the end. Wow. So just, a playoff victory like that, you don't have a whole lot of, there's so few playoff games that are decided in the last seconds of a game. So.
On the flip side of that, what's one of the most difficult things you've seen at MRA? That you're like, you know what, that we have to get better at this, and now you're the AD and we've gotten better at that, or maybe striving to do that. Has there ever been any kind of that in your 27 years of just like, you know what, we should have done that different?
Well, there's definitely things where there were certainly growing pains coming through the entire process. When you grow so much over a 10 or 12 year period,
right?
There's some things we did with team sizes maybe that we could have done differently. There's some times where we said, hey, it's time to cut, and maybe we didn't. Maybe we waited a couple of years too long, and our rosters got a little bit too big. And you want to include those kids, and you want to give them opportunities, but at the same time, if you keep too many kids on a roster, they're not going to be able to play, and then they're going to be upset because they're not getting to play.
That's a great point.
It's a tough deal because you want kids to want to be involved, and you want to allow kids to be parts of all your teams. But as you grow, it's not going to be healthy to have a 35-man baseball roster. It's not going to, now football is, we want as many football kids.
Right.
There's hardly ever a time, because there's so many different positions football-wise. You can play special teams. You can play a little bit on defense. There's free substitutions all over the place. But, when you get to basketball and baseball, then, team size is just, it's a tough sell. There's no great solution when you have a whole bunch of kids that want to play sports. I can remember Coach DeWeese having 23 or 24 wanting to play basketball, and we rotated jerseys for a couple of years. And there were kids that some of our kids were a little wiser than others. They would look at the schedule from the very beginning, and they would be like, all right, I'm going to be number 3, and they figured it out looking at the schedule all the way through. I'm going to rotate to this. I want to play in the odd games because those are the better games, or those are the ones with the bus trips where they wanted to be on the bus, and that kind of stuff. But
that's
just growing. There have been growing pains with growth.
Yeah. All right. Last 2 things. Let's talk about that all sports trophy, because we've hinted around it. We've talked about it. That's got to be one of your coolest things.
Absolutely.
I'm just going to say that is, Coach DeWeese was always like wanting to get it. And I thought, very funny, but it was like the year he retires from being the AD, you're like, we'll win it. We'll win it again. Well, and it's one of those things that you said, we kept growing and kept growing and kept growing and kept growing to where now we're the largest independent school. So talk about when we won the first one, how awesome that was for you, because you're all about the coaches. I mean, you admitted earlier, and you mentioned it earlier in the podcast, of you're all about them. You want to see them succeed. And how you define success for us, what that looks like. It wasn't all about winning.
No.
I want you to go do your best. I want your team to achieve their best.
Well, we won, that year we won, and we won 7 state championships. But if you just take the points that we scored from those 7 state championships, we didn't win the all sports trophy with those 7 state championships. Right. It took seconds, and it took thirds, and it took fourths to just, it's a lot like winning a track meet. You're familiar with running a track meet. You don't just take your first place finishes and say, hey, we're going to win the track meet based on first places.
Right.
You got to have you got to have some seconds and some thirds and some fourths back there, and just encouraging all of our teams to play to the best of their ability. And that first year when we did win 7 state championships, that was an amazing year. It was incredible. But not every team won the state championship, and there are, we didn't win that all sports trophy by just a ton of points, and every finish was valuable, whether it was a third place here or a fourth place there or second place, and that's what we were talking about when in those coaches meetings that we were having. They were just the idea that everybody's got to get their kids to perform the best and be the best teammates they can be, which we're going back to what we talked about. And all of our coaches are good with that. They're good with helping their team be the best team they can be and having the most success possible. Yeah. And I think our coaches who are successful in the win and loss column, they still do a great job supporting our coaches that struggle in the win and loss column.
Yeah, it's a great point.
There's some groups that are going to be more successful than others. And anything you have, and our successful coaches do a great job. Our wins and loss coaches do a great job supporting those other coaches who may not be in the win column as often.
Yeah, I see it as, and I see a bunch of them just mentoring them. Like, this is how I would handle this situation. Not saying you have to take my advice, but this is how I would navigate this situation. So mentoring is a big thing. All right, I told you 2 things. This is my last one. You have some guys that want to go and be an athletic director that are going to listen to this podcast. What advice would you give them going into their first year as an AD? What did you learn in your first year?
Well, I'd have to say that my first year of actually being the athletic director.
Yeah, running the show.
I'd say the first thing is buckle up. I mean, it's time consuming. You're not up here. I'm not at football practice every afternoon until 6:30 or 7 like y'all are.
Right.
But I'm over watching softball, or I'm at the cross country meet, or I'm at the elementary football game, or I'm somewhere else. And there's so much for you to be able to support those coaches. You got to be able to get out and see them play. You got to be able to get out there and see them practice, which I don't do a great job at. I don't get out there and watch a lot of practices. But I trust our coaches, and I don't really feel like I have to. I feel like we have coaches who have effective practices.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we talk about, and when I go to AD conferences and stuff is, what's your evaluation tool for coaches and practices? And I'm like, I hire good coaches.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a great answer.
I didn't have to hire all of them. Most of them have been here longer than I've been the athletic director. So it's a testament to Coach DeWeese and to Mr. Land, and even back to Mr. Thompson, hiring good people. But Mr. Thompson and Mr. Land have both always had that philosophy. You hire good people, you can get out of their way, and you let them go to work.
That's a lot of truth.
But I would say as an athletic director, it's less about X's and O's, and it's a lot more about listening to parents.
Wow.
And because you're gonna have parents that are gonna want to share their concerns with the way things are going for their child, and it might be the coach's fault, and it might not be the coach's fault, but you got to listen and you got to figure out whether it's whether the coach has done something a little questionable this one time or not.
Right.
So those things, coach. Everybody's human. Coaches make mistakes. Parents make mistakes. Kids make mistakes, and it's a lot of listening and a lot of deciphering, and you have to use some discretion.
Is that one of the hardest parts, you think?
Oh, absolutely. Because parents love their children, and parents want the best for their children.
Yeah.
And parents, they want the best for their child, and sometimes they agree with the coach, and sometimes they don't agree with the coach.
Right.
And you gotta be I gotta be supportive of my coach, but I also have to be a good listener and make sure that I hear the parents, and I got to make sure that the parents, if they have if it's valid, then I got to act on it. And if it's a parent being just a little bit more of a parent than than what we'd like for them to be is, I got to help them. I got to help them navigate that too, and help them see that what's happening is best for our team at this point. Mm-hmm. Because what's best for my child isn't always what's best for the team.
Yeah.
And those are hard things to navigate sometimes, but we have to find ways to help parents navigate that. We have to find ways to help kids navigate that, and we have to help our coaches help our kids understand.
What's the easiest or most fun part about your job?
Friday nights.
Friday nights?
Yeah, not Fridays, but Friday nights.
How many steps do you get in on a Friday?
22 to 25,000.
Yeah. For those of those, if you haven't been to a game, if you come at 6:30 a.m., the tents are getting set up. There's a lot of moving parts, and Coach Hailey's moving about this fast. You're rolling. Yeah. So Friday nights are the easiest and the most fun. Awesome. Anything else before we wrap up tonight?
I just, thank you for all you do as far as you help out a great deal in the athletic department. It's always the part of the athletic director role you've taken over is it suits you well, and it suits me well. So you do a great job with that, and I appreciate it. And this is a fun thing to get to do, and I just want to encourage all our teams and all our coaches to do the best they can every time out.
And thank you again to Coach Hailey for joining us tonight in the lounge. Just a few takeaways that I got from our conversation was the success of coaches is not just about the wins and losses if you're an athletic director. It's letting them get the most out of their team and helping them reach that goal. The one word that stuck out to me the most was empathy. One of those where it's player to coach to coach, or even player to player. His advice that he gave as an AD, if you're aspiring to be an athletic director, is buckle up, because there's going to be a lot of times that you're not home, and a lot of sports that you have to go and watch them play. So those aspiring ADs, just buckle up and know what you're getting yourself into before you sign on that dotted line. One of the cool things is the changes that he talked about on Old Canton Road, from the 650 students to now 1,400 plus, and the changes of the many athletes that come back to campus. I think that's one of the major factors of developing and defining success within an athletic department is the amount of students that come back to campus and notice those differences. One thing I took from this as well was it's all about the interview. You go back in his interview that he was underdressed and still got the job. So sometimes you can be just going for a talk and you end up landing a job. And then the advice that he got from Mr. Thompson, I think all of us can take away with not just in athletics, but it's you're a CEO of a company. If you're leading a group of young people, less is more. So thank you to Coach Hailey for joining us tonight in the OCR Lounge, and thank you again to Brown Bottling for being the title sponsor of this podcast.